Good evening. Welcome to Channel 22 News. I'm Seymour Butts.
And I'm Perch Perkins.
And this is your Daily Menominee News. Our first story tonight, local man arrested for not paying his parking meter toll along 3rd Street on Monday. Local authorities say the driver has admitted to committing this crime multiple times and said, I quote, "What's the big deal? Can you believe it?
Yes, sir, Seymour. I heard his car was parked there for a whole 2 hours without paying.
How much time is he looking at?"
Well, it's hard to say, but traffic crimes range from 8 hours to 4 life sentences.
Yikes, that seems a bit aggressive.
Well, you know what they say, Seymour. Don't take the time if you can't do the time.
What?
Well, folks, it looks like we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more in a minute. Stay right there.
Alright, time for a bathroom break.
Yeah, I've been holding it all day.
Well, we've only been recording for an hour.
What? So, wonderful weather we're having.
Sure is, Perch. So, don't you think that the sentence for the guy parking for 2 hours was a little excessive?
Hey man, crime's a crime. I'm just happy we have police out there to catch these miscreants. Why are you so worked up about it anyway?
Yesterday when I came to work, I parked in the metered spot for a whole 3 hours, and I'm a little scared what might happen.
What?
And we're back with more Channel 22 News. We have a lot of stories tonight about your privacy, or rather, lack thereof.
It seems like we lose more and more privacy every day. Did you know that your internet browser records all of your history and lots of the information that you put into it?
That's right, Perch. Many internet browsers use browsing history and what are called cookies to track your information for a variety of reasons. An example of this would be a browser using your browsing history to give the user targeted ads.
You're telling me they remember all of the dumb questions that I asked Google?
Yes, it does, Perch. It even remembers the time you tried to search Google on Google. Most browsers use what are called cookies to track your data. Cookies are mainly used to keep track of your information that you provide in your browser through text fields, or that your browser provides other websites. If you've entered your home address into your browser before, there's a good chance that your browser remembers that information, and there's a possibility for it to potentially hand it out to any website you visit, even the questionable ones. Your browser can also provide information to websites without your knowledge, like your IP address or specs on your computer.
Yikes. I guess it's easy for people to learn a lot about me from all the sites I visit and the things that my browser records about me. If they want to, they can pinpoint my location, learn my habits and hobbies, and find out who I talk to and for how long. Well, at least they can't keep track of what I'm saying.
Actually, the Chromium browser began to remotely enable desktop microphones without user permission. This was intended to help users search by voice rather than typing, but ended up recording users when it wasn't supposed to. In order to turn this off, you have to not only realize that Chromium is listening, but also go into settings and opt out of that feature.
Well then, it's a good thing I use Internet Explorer.
Unfortunately, you can also be spied on by your computer and phone cameras too. Britain's NSA ran a program that scanned webcam chats on Yahoo and other sites. Combining this with advanced face recognition software, the government can link together seemingly unrelated clips.
That seems like a really strong tool to defend against terrorism. But searching for a terrorist group online is like looking for a needle in a haystack. I guess the government decided that they'd rather just play it safe and take the whole stack rather than trying to pinpoint the needle.
Camera spying is becoming more and more commonplace. Simon Sidor, a Polish software engineer, recently demonstrated that phone cameras can be turned on without notifying the user. This would allow a third party to not only access your camera, but also your location.
Students in Pennsylvania sued their school district for installing spyware on school-provided MacBooks. The spyware would periodically take pictures of students, no matter where they were or what time it was. Computers took pictures of students at home, in bed, and sometimes partially clothed.
There have been numerous cases where hackers got into laptop cameras and took pictures of the owners. A man in Glenville, California, was sentenced to 5 years in prison for a hack that targeted the webcams of hundreds of women. Another case involved Jared Abrams of California, who used laptop cameras to take pictures of several women while they were changing and used the photos to blackmail them.
That's pretty spooky, Seymour. What about those home assistant devices like Amazon Echo and Google Home?
Good point, Perch. These devices have multiple microphones that are always listening to their surroundings.
Microphones that are always listening? That's crazy. You mean they can hear me singing in the shower?
That's right, Perch, and I feel so sorry for them. These devices are always recording you, and sometimes your recordings don't even stay with you. Recently, there was a case in Germany of a man who, while checking the logs that his Amazon Echo had for himself, received 1,700 logs that were from another person's device. My question is, if this random guy could find someone else's recordings entirely on accident, what could someone find on purpose?
I wonder if anyone could have predicted this attack on privacy.
Well, Perch, they did. These devices are oddly similar to the telescreens in George Orwell's 1984, with how much information they take in and display for others to see.
Say, Seymour, want to explain 1984 for the folks at home?
Sure thing, Perch. 1984 is a story by the author George Orwell depicting a dystopian future where the Earth is run by 3 superpowers and the government tries to control absolutely everything, even thought, through media, history, and language. They use two-way TVs called telescreens to spy on every individual in the nation. And with more on that, our correspondent, Casey Kasem, will be interviewing Mr. Orwell himself.
Wait, isn't George Orwell dead?
What? Thanks, Seymour. My name's Casey Kasem, and we're about to interview George Orwell. Hello, George. So your real name is Eric Blair. Are you okay if I just call you George? That's the name most people know you by. So George, why don't you tell us some of the main themes in your novel, 1984? I couldn't agree more that constant surveillance, mindless pursuit of power, social inequality, and controlling what is perceived as real are the main themes of the book. Like you wrote, he who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. After all, if you can't verify the past through record or memory, who's to say it happened at all? What we're focusing on in this interview is the first theme I mentioned, constant surveillance. Or what is closest to that in today's society, extreme lack of privacy. In 1984, the party could realistically watch every citizen 24/7. In today's world, the government can't watch everyone at all times, but they can find out what most people do at almost any time of day. Right, George? Good point, George. But let's try to focus on this lack of privacy issue, and then we can talk about social inequality and how every revolution seeks power, not peace or justice later. So anyways, George, what do you think about all this lack of privacy jargon? You know, it does remind me an awful lot of the telescreens and hidden microphones used by the party in 1984. The party members were under constant surveillance to protect against thought crime, while in today's world, law-abiding citizens are under constant government surveillance to protect against potential terrorist attacks. Do you think government monitoring could ever reach the levels the party had in 1984? You're right, George. Most people didn't know how bad government surveillance was in the US until Edward Snowden leaked NSA spying methods to journalists back in 2013. NSA surveillance is intended to stop terrorist attacks before they can take place. But what they're doing goes far beyond what Congress intended, and according to civil liberties groups, what the US Constitution allows. Do you see more connections between modern privacy intrusions and 1984? You really think that the NSA is that similar to the party from 1984, with all the spying and such? I guess I do too. They both are government bodies that are constantly spying on the public to ensure safety, but at what cost? Well, that's all the questions I have for you today. Thanks for your time, George. It has been a pleasure, George. Back to you all at the studio. What?
Are we live?
Thank you, Casey. Very cool. In unrelated news, Mittens, a three-legged kitten, was recently rescued from a tree. Local lumberjacks say that the methods used...
Wait! You hear that? Hold it right there, criminal scum!
Oh no, what did I do?
Don't play dumb with me, bucko! You and I both know you didn't pay your parking toll. I hope you like prison food, crimin'.
How did you know that?
Save it for the slam. What? This just in. Local news anchor arrested for failing to pay his parking meter tolls. Authorities say they heard him confess to his crimes through the microphone in his cell phone while using the restroom. Well, it just goes to show you folks, don't take the time if you can't do the time. I'm Perch Perkins. Thank you for listening to your local Menominee News, and have a great night.